So it's great to have you here today. We're excited to talk about the subject of healthy alliances. Now, as we begin today, I'd like to introduce to you Zari. She is a global health professional and a social entrepreneur. She served in global health, leading global, regional, and national teams in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. She received her MD physician's degree from Pakistan and a Master of Public Health degree from Johns Hopkins University. Zari is focused on providing strategic advice and program management support for innovation and creativity for global health programs. She's passionate about providing guidance and direction to particularly young Christian leaders to help them navigate the challenges and opportunities for intercultural competence for the 21st century with a biblical view. Over the past years, Zara has volunteered in leading the Red Shawl, a women's community organization that is volunteer-driven and aspires to improve communities, woman by woman, around the world. Another startup that Zara is involved in is with Health Entrepreneurs, a social enterprise invested in nurturing committed and motivated forerunners to lead for lasting change. As Zara says in her own words, my stories for change come from the people I meet, the communities I serve, and the experiences I've gained in over 25 years in 30 countries. So we welcome Zari today, and just before she comes to present, I'd like to lead us in prayer. Thank you to Heavenly Father for the privilege of ours today to meet together, to discuss and to explore this whole matter of healthy alliances. Lord, we know we're stronger together than individually alone. And so, Lord, we pray today as Zari leads us that we'll not only listen and learn, but that we'll be able to apply some of the things that she shares with us to our own personal lives and to the relationships we hold in our workplaces. And so, Lord, we commit this hour to you and thank you for the privilege of being here and ask you to be in our presence. In your name we pray. Amen. Zari, it's over to you.
Thank you, Don, and thank you for this opportunity. I want to say hello to Terry, somebody I know from over many, many years, worked together with him. Hi, Terry.
Hi, good to see you, Zari.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, and hello to everybody else. I've not met you, but thank you for joining today, because this is a time where we're going to just talk about a few things on healthy alliances, and thank you to Don for his great work with the CCBF to be able to bring us all together to learn and to explore things with each other. I am going to be talking about 3 points basically. So share some thoughts on those 3 categories. Like, does business alliance invoke competition? How can we foster future alliances and encourage growth? And then also, is forming alliances advantageous? So a few points that I would like to, start up with and share. And then there'll be, I'm going to try and see if I can also share an example from my work, and then also a biblical principle. And then, once we are finished, then maybe there'll be some time where we can all, share your thoughts together, our all thoughts together, and any examples or questions or any concerns that we have, and then we can discuss them openly. Okay. So the first one, does it invoke competition? Yes, it does. But the matter of fact, it actually reshapes the competition, because the only competition that matters is the one that we have with ourselves. What we were a year ago, a month ago, or even yesterday, the competition with ourselves or with myself is to be better, to strive for excellence, to do better than yesterday, better than last month, better than last year, better than last decade even. And I think that's why the reshaping of the competition, as we talk about alliances, is the important aspect. It helps us to compete better, because when we want to do better, and we want to be number one, then we have to work towards being that number one and being right there. Number one of many ones, I would say, or one of the top 10, or one of the top 5. I think every organization has that capacity and a will to be able to be placed in that kind of a category where they are seen as a strong contributor and a strong player. So alliances can actually help us compete better, because when as we talk more and as we look into the details, we will see that how it improves us actually. Like we already said, it's if we are our own competition, we are trying to be better by the hour, by the day, by the month. Then the second point is there are dissimilar capabilities, but then they can all be brought together and we're coordinated so that there are complementary and beneficial goods or products or outcomes that we may see. So we can take the dissimilarities, put it in a matrix, and then we have the nodal points. In spite of the dissimilar work or dissimilarities in our focus, in our goals and objectives and the kind of the mission, there are always some nodal points that can be taken up, and then that is where the value is added by all who are in that alliance. And then and also it enhances our competitive position, right? So as as a group coming together, the competitive or comparative advantage and position with the new access to technologies, to expertise, to market channels, is right there for us. And I think that one of the examples that I would like to use is that of Star Alliance. I'm pretty sure you know what it is. Many of us have traveled and have been part of the Star Alliance. It's as you know, it's one of the first ever global aviation alliance, where 5 airlines in 1997 came together to form an alliance to do better. And now we see that today there are 25 airlines all across Asia, Europe, the Americas, and Africa. So each of the airlines, they have their own distinct culture, their style, their services, and they compete against each other. Each one trying to be better, like we said earlier, better than what they were. But then they coordinate their actions and they come together like the matrix that we were talking about. So the coordinated action is when they compete together as a group, and I think that's the idea of forming an alliance. And the things that they coordinate action around as a group are, like just a few examples. There could be a lot more, but just a few examples is the airport locations and their lounges, the flight connections at different airports. Like you can connect from Air Canada to Lufthansa, for example, to Ethiopian Airline. Yeah, like there is coordination of digital infrastructure, frequent flyer points. All of those are the kind of things that they are coordinating as a group. But again, they all have this as this big outcome as a group, as an alliance, right? So I think that's the main point that we want to keep focusing in our lives, and try to bring that business aspect of forming alliance as we move forwards and building our own our organizations and our work. So it's almost like a constellation, and that's what my background of the PowerPoint was and is. I mean, so constellation, where we may be standing down here near my house and I'm looking at the sky, and all the stars, they appear to be close together as one body, as different shapes, as different constellations, as we may. And those who are interested, and they know what names are, what are they named, and how do you see them and all that. But actually, they're all different stars seen together in one shape. And then they're all different and very distinct. And I think that's another, viewpoint that we can keep in mind as an image of what an alliance can be, and how the togetherness is more than the one, right? The togetherness is perhaps more impactful, more wide, more beautiful for those to see. I mean, talking particularly about constellations. So, so again, one of the biblical principles that I thought here that I wanted to talk about was when Nehemiah built the wall. We know that he was able to do that in 52 days. I don't know if any one of us can claim that we can finish a project in 52 days. Probably not. Yeah, well, depending on size of the project. But then, he was able to negotiate with the other Jews, his fellow countrymen, negotiate with the king, get some resources together, get the relocation back to Jerusalem and start the work. And he was able to to bring them together, to give them that motivation, that alliance mindset for that common goal. Each had their own role, each had their own, all the suppliers, the king and the other countries, even the neighboring countries, but they were able to come together and finish the job in 52 days. And most of the important aspect that I thought was important for our discussion today as part of the CCBF is that he sought God's help and his guidance at every point. And I think that's a very key factor that we as Christians have in our pocket, have it in our realm of resources, and that's what we need to continue to build on. So I think the example that I thought I would share from my work is, back in Cambodia, this was way back in the early 90s when I was there setting up the HIV/AIDS programs. This was the time when just after the war, a lot of organizations had come to offer services, and at that time this was, and I think there might be much more now, but in 1992, 93, 4, there were about 72 different organizations who were offering HIV/AIDS programs. And the only way that we could collaborate, we could make some sense out of it, like what are we going to do with all the people, was to form an alliance. And it was the HIV/AIDS Coordination Network. And we were all working our individual organizations, bringing our individual values, but also presenting that one plan to the government of Cambodia for, as an alliance. Okay. Yeah. So how can we then foster, future alliances and encourage growth and all that? So the most important point that I want to share here is that building alliances starts with us, with me, with you. It has to start with us. It has to be way before investment in ourselves, in our continuous improvement, and having that living system of growth and going and taking it all the way. So not only thinking about it and starting, but taking it all the way to completion, and doing it all the way with our best ability and our best possibilities and capabilities. It has to start with us. And that's how we can foster future alliances and encourage growth. And it's about unleashing the champion within us, the champion within you as a project leader, the champion in us as an organization, the champion in us as an organization who wants to bring change. So starting with us, it has to be years before, or maybe days before. I mean, I know we are saying Nehemiah was able to do it in 52 days, but for us, we are in reality, the continuous improvement and self-investment has to start way before. And the second one is the brand awareness. So knowing our own brand, our own, what are we talking about? What do we stand for? What are the things that we are able to say, okay, this is what I'm bringing here into the group. And then again, like we were saying earlier, that there are similarities and there are dissimilarities. But then again, brand awareness when we understand those dissimilarities and still how they can impact the whole, the collective impact, And then is the mitigation of risk. Of course, if we, and you know, all of you know about project management and the RBM cycles and the log frames and the theories of change and many other project documents that we have worked on in our lives. So knowing our risks and planning to address them way beforehand, even when we are still developing the documents. And then widening our resources, but setting the boundaries as well. So widening our resources, even the capacity resources, the capability resources, the human resources, but setting up the boundaries. That's a very important aspect. And I would like to share here an example right here with my work with World Vision Canada. And I think yeah, that was way in the early 90s when, you know, HIV/AIDS programs was becoming big with the government of Canada. It was called CEDA at that time. Now it's Global Affairs, right? So they were looking at how to offer the programs in a more effective and more in a way that helps them to, you know, to make it more impactful, but with lesser resources from their side. And that's when the concept of forming coalitions, which is another strong word for forming alliances, was starting. And that time World Vision Canada and CARE Canada, Save Canada, we all large organizations, they came together and they formed the Canadian coalition to address HIV/AIDS. So what World Vision was able to do as one in 2 countries, 3 countries, with the coalition from large organizations, we had 10 countries at the same time, same project, same objectives, same outcome in 10 countries. And the donors were very happy because for them, it was one leader to manage. I mean, so there was one leader, and yeah, you know, luckily it was. I'm saying luckily because it was good learning for all of us. It was World Vision Canada who were with the lead of the coalition and with the donor. So the donor is managing one lead. They are looking at one budget. Now, how does the coalition then manage the budget is an internal story. But an example where a lot of dissimilarities came together, widened resources, and self-capacity, self-awareness, but with set boundaries. So this was such a great example, and we were able to do those projects for 10 years. One round and then second round. So the second round was also won by the coalition instead of the individual organizations. And here I want to use the example of Jesus himself, you know, like especially the setting boundaries and self-investment, because we know that Jesus took special time to pray and to spend time with God the Father. He knew himself, right? He was pretty self-assured person. He knew who he was, and he declared it many times. Why he came into the world, and he never let that be compromised. That was a very, very important aspect that we need to continuously keep in our mind. And then he set boundaries. Whenever there was time for him to go and go separately, he would say that. And then allowing that time and space for his personal growth and preparation and rest and reflection and continuing to grow. Yeah, so again, now, so we said, yes, forming alliances is does it sound advantageous? Well, there's a book, and Jane Howard, she's put it in very easy words. So she said, call it a clan, call it a network, call it a family, whatever you call it, whoever you are, we need one. So I think she's coming more from, you know, personal level of relationships, networking, a clan or a tribe with a plan. But then again, it's important for us to understand that the building of alliances is advantageous. It's advantageous because it ignites success. It gives us that continuous keeping us on our toes. and it is advantageous for us, for our own outcomes and delivery and impact, and for the group as well. So like we were saying in the Star Alliance example, so they are competing against each other basically for their own culture and services and the airline goals and all, but they are also bringing together that richness as a group to be able to make that alliance offer better options for the travelers, right? Then again is we have more bargaining power because there's more people, there's more HR, there are more supplies, there's more stakeholders who can continue to support and provide their inputs. Yeah, again, it's almost the same thing, but then also it widens and diversifies. So there's diversity, but it also widens the options that we can offer and play with. So it's almost like, again, the constellation image that we can reach the stars. We can, because the broad, wide range that we can offer. One thing I really love to say, and that is unite and conquer. Unite and conquer. That is my favorite word that I've used a favorite phrase that I've used many times in the work that I've done before. And it's basically about loyalty, but then that mindset, where you unite and conquer. That's an important aspect that we need to keep in mind. And I think I'll wait here and would love to hear stories from you all towards the end about how loyalty and where you did unite and come together and you were able to unite and conquer. But here, again, a very well loved story of Ruth and Naomi from the Bible. Their loyalty to each other could have been is none other. There's none other like that and there's exemplary, and it is one that has been used for studying and for looking into, for reflection for years. And we know that it could have been much easier for Naomi not to ask her daughters-in-law to come along, but she did. And it could have been very easy for Ruth, or easier for Ruth, to not come along and just stay with her own people, with her own. And she could have, not that, and definitely she could have found another husband. That's what I'm trying to say. And it could have been much easier to go back even when the other daughter-in-law didn't come. She still decided to come. And I think that's the loyalty we are talking about. That's the uniting and conquer. And we know that both of them, they had each other's back. They had each other's best in their mind. They had each other's goodness and the goodwill. And they ignited success for both of them, for each other. And that's an important aspect that we need to continue to keep in our mind when thinking about and forming alliances. The loyalty, the being there for each other, and the success that we can bring out. Yeah, so I also wanted to talk about, some of the negative things that can happen, because negative outcomes can happen out of business alliances, and there are many examples, even from the Bible and our daily lives. And again, I thought we can share that more in the discussion time. But then there's also room for us to avoid those negative outcomes, and there are some key practices that we can do. And then again, because of time, we cannot go into all details, but these could be, topics in themselves that can be presented or talked about, at different times. And that is the alliance cost and benefit analysis. So it's not only your own cost and benefit analysis, but the alliance cost and benefit analysis, the congruence of goals, like we were saying, they're dissimilarities, but we bring them together and know the nodal points. So congruence of goals is important. The change that will occur. We talked about, the effect of the constellation, the widening of resources, the more and more impact that we could have had, the widening of our impact. And so all of that has to be understood way before. What is the change? And also, from going back to the goals, there could be two things. that we want to achieve as an alliance. So two, but two is good, and it could be really big. So, or there could be one, but it's important that we know what is that that congruent goal that we are looking at. Developing and communicating a solid business plan with a detailed contract somewhere in the back, which is the like your paperwork support and your important documents that you need to have. Then the matrix of assessing how are we going to look at what is the value added by the alliance. Now here, that's another point, because there will be continuous value added by each organization on their own. But when it comes to the alliance, so we are looking only at the value added by the alliance as that collective group. And then, of course, the cost and benefit analysis. I also wanted to come and bring out the aspect that nowadays we may call it something different, because over the years, the strategic partnerships or collaborative ventures, so many different words have come into coalitions. Those are the terminologies that have come into play and have been used over the years. But it's the point of again to remember and to understand that whatever the terminology, whatever is the most trendy way to look at things, whatever appeals to us more, but the basic principles, they all stay the same. Because especially for the Gen Z, the young, because I said I'm very committed to developing young professionals and investing my whatever I know into them and their work. So the Gen Z, instead of looking at loyalty as a single word, they express loyalty to their collective actions, to their preferences, to their favorite brands, favorite outcomes that they understand, and that's how they express loyalty. That's how they see it as a plural instead of a singular approach. That's an important aspect that we should all keep in mind, because it's all about teaming up in a very positive way. I know that sometimes we have a little bit of a negative connotation, or they are teaming up against me or something like that. No, teaming up can be very positive, because we are teaming up for a task. We are teaming up for a goal. We are teaming up to achieve something different, which or additional that we may not have been able to do up on our own. Okay, and then the biblical principles that I thought were very important to consider here, because at times we feel that we as Christians can work only with other Christians, because we are talking about that there has to be congruence on your values, on your basic missions and vision, and your commitments, your convictions. But then also, it's very important for us to understand, especially with the current way of the things in the global development, global health sector, or even in our work at home here in Canada, we see that opening up and working with others who do not align with us as far as our faith is concerned, or who we may call as non-believers in our faith, it's very, very important, because we are actually called to do that, right? We are actually called to reach out and to bring the biblical worldview to them. It's not that I'm going to shy away and sit back and say, this cannot happen because we are not, they don't think like us, they are not one of us. Yeah, but the fact that I am called to bring that biblical worldview to them is my conviction to bring the concept of forming alliances in today's world. And we may need to learn more about it. We may need to learn how to do it better. And I think that's where the change needs to happen. And then also, the biblical principles that are important here is honoring God through our alliances, is because we say that we are called to bring the biblical worldview. The honoring the importance of demonstrating our biblical values. and bringing the love of Christ to our vision and mission, which then, of course, no matter how individual we are, when as part of the alliance, we do bring our values into the group. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. We do that, of course. And then we have that capacity and that opportunity to be able to influence others with our Christian faith and our goodness and our goodwill that we have in the Bible to bring to them. And then the importance of righteousness through our witness. I think that's a very, I know it's hard to say that we are righteous, but when we are saved and we are claiming that we are saved and we are committed Christians, then we are righteous in Jesus. And that's the witness I bear. And that's the witness I want to promote. And then last of all, the servant leadership, the mutual respect, the accountability that we bring. These are the important aspects, the biblical principles that help us to control the negative outcomes of business alliances. And then one of my favorite verses again is Micah 6:8. And I'm going to read it loud here. He has shown you, O man or woman, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So I think I'm going to end here. And back to Don, because I think, Don, you are going to coordinate the discussion session, right?
That's right. Well, thanks so much for that presentation. That was excellent. I appreciate it. Gave us some good food for thought and some the ways of looking at alliances that I think are very helpful, especially with biblical principles. Why don't we take a few minutes for questions or stories? What has been your experience with business alliances? When have you found them working? When have you found them failing? And if you have questions for Zari, feel free to share those as well. So I'll give you a moment to do that right now.
Oh, I think so. Thank you, Zari. That was a great presentation. So thank you for sharing that. I feel that alliances can work very well, but they can also, if you're not careful, take up a lot of time without any outcomes or without desired outcomes. And I've experienced both. So when there are alliances, and it depends on the purpose of the alliance. So I'll just use my own example. A few years ago, there was a person, another designer, who started a design collective. And the thought behind that was that other designers would come together and, we would, be able to take on larger projects by utilizing each other's resources, et cetera, which, was a lovely thought. But the challenge in that was there was no leader. There was no one, no decision maker, right? It was just, oh, let's, all decide together, no, like it's a business and you need to run it as a business and there has to be a final decision maker, right? So, and we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it, way too much. And then I finally had to just cut ties and leave because there was zero output. So it was, in that respect, it didn't work. But I've also built alliances with other people in my industry that have worked very, very, very well. But it's like anything else, you have to treat the relationship well, be respectful, but also have systems and processes in place to support the initiatives. Right. And that's when it worked well for me.
Thank you. Thank you for that point. If I may respond to that, to your point, when there is no one leader, because at that time, yes, definitely it would be dysfunctional. Because there has to be one leader, the coalition leader, you may call them, alliance leader, or whatever the terminology, right? The partnership leader, but they are responsible for coordinating. That's the biggest function of the leader, right? It's not that they are sole decision makers, but they are the best coordinating. And that coordination is what makes the difference.
Thanks for that illustration, Tracy. That's very helpful because I think you've got a good point. Without a leader, it becomes directionless and everyone no one wants to usurp, no one wants to step up, creates a real problem.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm part of a monthly biz group that meets once a month to talk about these biblical principles. And one of the things that we talked about in our group earlier this month was kind of identifying like what makes a healthy alliance and what would we look for in attempting to develop healthy alliances. And the two sort of running themes that everyone seemed to agree on was one, the principle of like reciprocity, and that to have a really healthy alliance, that you can identify ways that the alliance is benefiting both parties or all parties that are involved.
Mhm.
And the other one was a concept of like shared values. So we talked a lot about how, oftentimes differences are good
Mhm.
to have in
Mhm.
alliances,
Mhm.
different ways of doing things, different histories and those sorts of things. But we kind of all agreed that to have a really healthy alliance, it comes down to values. So I'm a little interested in wondering maybe to hear a little bit more at the end of your presentation. You were talking about forming alliances with non-believers and how that might create challenges
Mhm.
from a value perspective.
Yeah, thank you. That's a Carrie, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. I think that's a very important point and a point that is very close to my heart because many countries where I've worked, they were always not always Christian. You know, we worked in countries which were predominantly Islamic or Buddhist, or like the communities were the Hindus for India, for example. But the important point here again is the fact that something you said earlier, that the value added or the reciprocity is not at every level, right? So if we are going into a coalition or an alliance with a local organization which are not Christian, everything they have and everything we have may not be aligned, may not be, and they're not aligned because their work, their faith is not aligned. But the only thing that is aligned at times is the change in the people's lives that we want. And I think that's where we were able to come together with them. Like if I'm talking about, like again, my big example, let me share this from Cambodia, because that's predominantly Buddhist country. And they were just coming out of their civil unrest for, like they had this a very bad regime, and almost 2 million people were killed and all that, and they were coming out of it. So they had many other baggages that were still affecting their mindset and their work style and the country's overall system and infrastructure and all that. But because what they wanted was the good for the people, and World Vision, we were also wanting good for the people and change in their lives. So we were able to come together. And then honestly, the way we, then there is room for them to work independently and for us to work independently, but we are aligned on that one goal, right? Could it be HIV/AIDS education? Could it be HIV/AIDS care? Those are the kind of things that we were able to do. Again, coming back to the Star Alliance example, it's a very business, very corporate kind of an example, but they all compete against each other. But when it comes to those 3 or 4 points, perhaps a lot more than the few that I mentioned, then they are working together. So I think even for us to be able to influence the world with the biblical worldview, I think there is no better way but to form alliances, but to able to understand how are we going to reach out to others who do not have the same faith.
It seems to me that you can have common values They may or may not be faith-based, depending on where you come from, but they have the common values and a common outcome and goal that you're targeting for. Then you can, as a Christian, be influential in that relationship as they see qualities within you that they may not necessarily recognize within their own, quote, clan or tribe. And so I think there's a place for that. And I think it's quite useful, particularly when it's for quality of life issue. Then that's a big one. And whether you are of this faith or that faith, has some bearings, but not the primary bearings. The primary bearings is the value of the outcome.
Right. And if I may add, like you mentioned about my work with Red Shawl, because the thing is that the younger generation, the future generation, their thought process is very, very different, and their expression of faith is very different. Their expectation of church or going to church or participation in church is very, very different. So I think it's a big challenge for us, for the previous generations like us, or the middle ones, the millennials, that they would call them, to be able to understand how are we going to do it. If they do not use the same language, they do not use the same thought process, the processing of things, the systems that they want to use, it's not the same. But I think if we do not start it now, to start to think like, how are we going to nurture and support the leaders in future, we will have lost quite a bit.
I think you make a really good point, Zari, in that the one value for alliances that we don't want to overlook is the fact that generationally things can be passed from generation to generation through an alliance that might not otherwise be passed along.
Right.
I think, you could kind of compare that to a sales funnel, right? So I think that's or the analogy, use an analogy of a sales funnel, like if in the future that you need leaders to do XYZ, then if you need 10 of them or 500, you're not going to only have that amount in your funnel that you're going to nurture and train and kind of bring along the way. You'll have many more than that, right?
Good point.
Not all will stay, right? They may change career paths. Who knows what may happen? And kind of the same in a sales funnel, right? Like you always have to be building and working at that all the time. But I think your points are like I agree. Like I think it's going to be challenging because it's a very different thought process, a younger generation, and then I guess it becomes a different question and a different conversation as to how to make that happen.
Good point. Other comments, perspectives, suggestions?
Zari, first of all, just thank you for your presentation. But yeah, a couple of thoughts from our own experience. I mean, one of them being, the whole idea that you're all striving towards, a common goal that the alliance or the partnership wants to achieve. But we found from our experience, it's important that all the members understand each of the individuals, organizations or people, what their other motivations are personally. And if you understand, when you begin to understand those, you can actually help each other to achieve not only the overall goal for the alliance, but individual ones as well. And then just to give you an example, we started working with Habitat for Humanity, and we made it very clear to them that we wanted to get into the affordable housing. That was our personal goal. We had the overall goal to work with them on a specific project, and they told us what their individual goals were too. I mean, we now are working with other groups, on in the area of affordable housing, because they went out of their way. They knew that that's something that we wanted to work in. And the reason that I think that understanding each other and what you're, not only the overall arching goal that the group has, but the individual ones, is because it sustains the relationship. Because otherwise, if you're only doing this one-off project, you tend to a short while you tend to start to drift off into you either not participate or to go off on your and try and find benefits for yourself. So and then the other one is right from the beginning, whoever's facilitating is really trying to show transparency within the group. Because it's only with transparency that you actually see trust. And from earlier comments that you made and other people made, I mean, that's the glue that holds the
Right.
partnership together. And I guess my last comment is that just the recognition that not everybody is equal around the table, but that everybody has a right to be at the table. That whole equity issue is what's important too, for people to commit to. So, but yeah, thanks again, Zari, for the presentation.
Yeah, sometimes it has to be a common goal, otherwise it won't happen. Because if one party is interested in continuous, being like investing into each other than that alliance, right?
Right.
So again, that could be formed as part of the common goals or the matrix that we have.
It reminds me of Philippians chapter 2, where Paul talks about the importance of looking out for the interests of others more than for yourself. I think the more we listen and learn from others, the more we're able to provide the kind of leadership that's necessary for an alliance. And so I think that's a good reminder. I think it's the first 8 or 9 verses of Philippians chapter 2 speaks to that and how Christ did likewise, thought more of others than for himself.
Zari, which coalition or alliance was the most unexpected?
Good question.
The one in Cambodia.
In Cambodia.
Yes, because like I was telling you, there were 72 different organizations that came together, and they were all, and I'm talking about like early 90s, 1993, 94. There could be many more now, but they were all invested into improving the life of Cambodian people who were just coming out of the war and all. So the most unexpected was the fact that like you being a Christian organization, I was with World Vision Canada at that time, and then Cambodia, that working with people who are not from your own faith, and their expression of faith is very, very different. And many things that they do is so different from the way you, even the way they value life, the way they treat life is different from the way that we thought, or even like from the world standard. The global standard for valuing life was different. And doing business, I know you were talking about the funnel forming, and the other business aspects. Doing business in many of the Asian countries is different, right? Their value system is different. The processing is different. Same I felt a lot in Africa, where I was doing a project on TB control in a very distant community. And Indonesia, again, it brings me two stories to my mind. So they would see you as somebody who has just, as an intruder almost, because you're walking into the village, you dress differently, you come differently, and these are really remote communities. The government would give us the most difficult and most remote areas, 12 hours ferry ride one way. And we landed on that island where the TB project was being implemented. And the way they look at you is, who are you? And rightly so. Who are we? Because we don't know anything about the way they live, the way their challenges are, the way they do business locally, and who speaks up, who doesn't speak up. I mean, all those kind of things, they matter. But then again, understanding and being there, like staying in the village for a few days, helped us to understand how do we how do we implement the programs? Because, you know, just one little story. So the one of the Indonesian project managers, she was very young. So the next morning she comes to me and she said, you know, I don't think I can do this project. I said, why? And she said, you know, like the district health commissioner, he just thinks I'm a little child, and they are not ready to listen to me. And maybe I may be as old as his daughter and things like that. But then again, and I saw that challenge. She was, and they would do that, right? They were not ready to listen to these people from Jakarta, educated and trained, and even being Indonesian, you know, but they were different from the people who were on Alor Island. So you know, those kind of challenges, they're always there. But then again, that was not alliance in the sense that any um, I mean, slightly different from the alliances that we might form, but alliances in the process. That's what was happening there, because the district health commissioner, they wanted better health, and the project wanted better health, so for the people and for the TB patients to be treated. And then also, you know, like oh yes, if I may, one more story. This was way back in one of the villages in Kenya, where we were talking about how women can be empowered more to, so that they don't get HIV infected and all that, because they were just being infected, you know, by their own, you know, husbands and their own life partners. So one of the things that was brought forward was to help them get income, like additional income. But to start a business and to set up a business in Voi, which is a very distant community out of Nairobi, is very different from what we would present to them on paper. Like a business plan to us is a business plan, but there is no business plan. But they still have a plan. It's still not. It's just that it's not on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are the kind of things that are different. And there, but then again, it took us time. It took us longer to understand how can still women start their own little business and start earning a little bit more money, so that she has expendable income, and that made a difference. She then has more leverage to make health decisions. She has extra money to spend on the health of the child, or even for herself.
Well, thanks, Zari, for that fine presentation. We appreciate very much, and for the discussion. Thank you to each of you participating. So we'll say farewell. Have a great day. May God
Thank
bless
you.
you this Easter season. May you find yourself rejoicing in his resurrection this weekend
Mhm.
with
Yes.
family and with friends.